Welcome along to Netball Unlocked, and I'm so pleased to say that in the latest of our extended interview series with the Super League now past the halfway stage, we're delighted to have Claire Nelson, the Super League's Managing Director. Claire, we know you're super busy. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to. I did say at the start of the season that I wanted to be able to talk more about what was happening and what was going on, and the last 10 weeks have been a whirlwind, but hopefully we can have a really good catch up today and then chat more regularly before we get to the end of the season.
I was going to ask you very first of all, we saw some netball royalty was hobnobbing last night at the Sport Industry Awards. How was that?
Oh, it was lovely, and honestly, like yesterday was just so busy, and then you think you've got to get ready and go out. But these things are great. One, because it's good to catch up with everybody. Two, and this is the thing at the moment, is we're in our netball world, and we're every single day working through everything we need to do. And then you walk into there were 1,500 people, everyone from every sport. I mean, real, professional sports, Olympians. And you walk in and everyone wants to talk about netball, and it's really exciting, and they love what they're seeing and they want to ask questions. And so we sit there and we were all kind of like, we can't wait till we win some awards and we can get to that elevated level. You look at some huge sports that have gone on massive journeys, and we're very aware of where we are at the start of that, but it's an exciting place to be, and it's great to be able to represent netball in those really prestigious rooms.
I suppose that's a pretty good place to start. We'll get into the weeds of things in due course, but we're coming up to round 10. We've just had a really cool Wembley occasion. This weekend we're at the M&S Bank in Liverpool as well for Thunder. What are your kind of assessment of where things are after these first few weeks of competition?
Well, I'm delighted to have some mid-season stats, because kind of how you feel, as you say, when you're in the thick of it is not always indicative of what's actually going on. And I mean, 10 weeks into we talk about being a 10-year journey. I'm really delighted with the progress we've made. And, I'm sure we're going to talk about things that we want to look at and improve, but some of the stats that we've got at the moment with increases in attendances, increases in our average attendance at this moment in time, over 1 million broadcast views. Our average winning margin is down, and almost, it's like a shred of a percentage in line with SSN. We've smashed all of our impressions and reach and digital engagement statistics. So, from how hard it is every single day for us and clubs and players and stakeholders and partners getting up and trying to deliver, what we can report is quite significant growth. And I think one of the most exciting things that we talk about in our sport, I always talk about the uniqueness of the netball audience and the power of that audience. And we're actually working with government and a couple of agencies on how do we as women's sports start to better talk about the power of a female audience that isn't in the traditional metrics of men's sport. But when you look at our average viewing figures for broadcast, we are up slightly year on year, but they're consistent across all 4 games. So what this is showing us is that more people are watching more often. 52% of that is on demand. So when you go back to like Women's Sports Trust data and they start to talk about the evolving habits of women and why women watch and consume sport differently to men, we are that case study that shows that. And then when you look at the fact that 75% of our viewing audience is female and under 35, we then move into a very powerful territory. And so that's really what we've been out there really talking about and celebrating, that we've got this very powerful consumer fandom that we asked our fans to show up, and they've done it, and they're doing it consistently. So we're seeing lots of trends, we've got lots of learnings moving forward, but to have taken games into bigger venues, to have increased our broadcast coverage, and to see the growth in attendances, ticket sales, and that reach and engagement to match that, it's really positive.
It's great, Claire, to hear that there is sort of an increase in broadcast coverage, and I think we had Ella Powell Davies on, and she was talking about how having every game accessible, being able to watch is is such a great thing. But you'll know as well, like we do, that certainly for the first half of the season, there were some issues with the streaming.
Yeah.
And that's something that, we hear a lot of feedback on from fans and from our end as well, just as journalists trying to cover a game when things disappear. And we're just wondering really like what the situation is with that, because there's sort of, three parties it looks like involved. But, what are the origins of those issues, and how important are they to sort of fix going forwards to retain that audience?
Every week we sit and we do a prayer for like smooth streaming. Like, it's the most important thing for us. We know that we have to get the basics right, and we have to put this great product out there. We are fighting harder than every other women's sport out there that has the infrastructure and the money and the investment, and they can just, like, we don't have a lot of fat in what we're doing to not be brilliant and to get things right. And so that's why, for me, who feels, and every single week when it's not quite as we would have liked it, and everyone wants to take to social media and air their frustrations, actually to see that people are watching and showing up is great. What we are doing as broadcasters, as production companies, as NSLco, as England Netball, and as clubs, is every single week working through what these issues are. And there's millions. Look, when streaming's gone down, we've had a couple of sort of freak episodes. One, BT Openreach went down. One, just, we had a technical outage. These things didn't just affect netball, they happen. We sit every single week going through these things, and how do we improve them? We're getting more data, more learnings, more sophisticated in how we operate them, what technology is needed. We've got all these different venues. Each venue is completely different, and what that infrastructure is, and every single week we're getting smarter. What I want people to know is that we know that we are all working together to tackle it, that we see it, we hear it, and we're straight onto it, and that we are working as a collective to try and really make sure that we are seamless week in, week out. So I feel it, and I apologise that it's not been as perfect as we would like it every single week, but that's a small sport. Trying to make our sport free to air and accessible, and what can we do but just keep working through it, and bear with us, everybody. And hopefully we have seen improvements, and we do. It's an absolute priority for us all to get it right, for all of us.
I think it's an interesting point you brought up towards the end there, Claire, because obviously the sport kind of has a battle and make itself so accessible, as you've said. And I was fortunate enough to work at Sky, and when we came to the decision about streaming, that obviously kind of brings a bit of a question, I suppose, for you and the broadcasters, the BBC as well. It's like, do you guys debate and think about whether making all 4 games available is great, or maybe like one really high quality, in dream scenario, Monday Night Football type of product that maybe reviews the round that's gone, has a little bit more detail, a little bit more nuance, or is really the importance getting all 4 games out?
Actually, having all 4 games free to air and available is number one. So if you look at I talk a lot about, we have to unlock our commercial value in the marketplace in order to be able to bring in the money to reinvest back into the game. And there's a number of ways that we're looking at that. At the moment, the big hot topic is investment. So we've just seen Serena Williams' husband invest a huge amount of money into Chelsea. I'm having conversations last night with my colleagues across women's sport. And it's great to see this, but it's also setting a false narrative. Not everyone has a Michelle Kang walk into a dressing room and write a check. So actually, for sports that need to build and unlock their commercial value, broadcast is critical. Broadcasting and sponsorship. This is driven by fans and eyeballs. And so what we want is to try and get a bigger rights fee for a longer termed agreement, and that enables all the other commercials to build and the value of the sport to grow. So that means we need eyeballs, which is why we said at the start of the season, this is really about showing up. It's about tuning in, watching, and showing the appetite and the trends of growth for our sport year on year. So that was when Sky came to us and said we would like to treble the coverage and take all 3 games as opposed to 1. I did ask the question, is that going to dilute our numbers? Is that going to take away from what we're desperately trying to do, is to show you growth? And they said no, they backed themselves, and they've shown that. We've seen that in the data, the consistency in the numbers, and that growth is really promising. And going back to that demographic, it's untapped, and that's what we're going to package and take forward. But we do have tiered games, so you will see the difference in like an arena game being a tier 1, and that's the Sky and BBC First pick, and then the other games are tier 2. So we're kind of leveling up that production, which is an affordability piece. What we have obviously introduced, we've really worked hard on commentary and talent this year. You will have seen some changes and some mix-ups, and that was really making sure that how games are called, how they're responded to, how they're discussed, the perspectives that we hear, that can professionalize and add to new and existing fan experiences and their expectations. The introduction of the Sky Sports News piece that Tamsin does on a Monday, and the Off the Court, which Chloe, I love. I saw that you joined that. Again, it's additional visibility for us and positioning of our sport as well as content. A lot of this is trial. Like, we've got to try, because we're unique in the marketplace. The women's football audiences are still heavily driven by men, and men that will watch football anyway. So we're almost that case study for new, how women want to watch it, how females want to watch, how young people want to watch. So moving forward, and the other thing to say with that, again, going back to that 52% on demand, us trying to create an appointment to view that's put behind a paywall and linear isn't going to work for our audience right now. And so that's all of this is part of kind of growth of fandom in order for us to package, sell, and drive into the next phase in our commercial cycle.
Claire, one of the things I picked up on ahead of the season was you spoke about being inspired by the WNBA, which is, a great aspiration. Paul and I both cover the WNBA in our respective jobs, and women's basketball. One of the things that stands out when you watch the WNBA is that when you're watching the broadcast is the statistical data that appears on the screen. That level up of how the sport is sort of evolving through the game while you're watching it as a fan. And I was just wondering, getting the games up and accessible and getting that commentary piece forward is brilliant. But when can we expect that sort of next level data to be appearing live to kind of complement the coverage?
Working through it, Chloe, and we totally get it. And it's something that we're really trying to build into what the commentators do. But moving forward, like this season for us, I'm going to keep reminding everyone, we're like 10 weeks in and from scratch. I mean, I reflected last night that this time last year, our new clubs hadn't even signed their contracts. And we have all said, the owners of Birmingham in particular have said it's like trying to fly the plane that isn't built yet. So it's been a lot of let's just get things up and running. But you will see that we have a new website this year. What sits behind that is that our technical officials have got a new way of capturing, recording statistics. Those statistics are to feed into the website and to be available then through broadcast feed and streams. Getting all of that up and running, it's had bugs, it's had challenges, it's been a work in progress. We wanted to get the new website up, and then we've been working through those. So absolutely, what I would like to see for our sport is that for those that are real dedicated fans, we can take them on a deeper and more sophisticated journey around the sport, what's happening, those matchups. Very Tamsin-esque, she loves her stats, but also for new fans, that I think is how you can engage and get really invested in a sport that's got a lot of rules, is quite fast moving. So it's absolutely in there. It's a work in progress. We're just tackling what we can when we can in this inaugural season.
You just touched on it a little bit, Claire. So I suppose beyond that, and it's beyond us netball nerds who are happy to sit and talk for 2 hours on a Tuesday night. That's me and Chloe, for anyone who listens to us every week. How do you go beyond that then? I suppose that really doesn't have an obvious answer, but how do you attract mainstream media attention? Because people, I'm happy to name, like maybe the Guardian, maybe Telegraph, Women's Sport. You know, we saw an article in the Observer at the weekend. There is still that cut through that seems to have been there for such a long time in mainstream media, and that's not to do local media disservice, because a lot of sort of your local media outlets do a terrific job. How do you, as a cohort and as teams, try and bridge that gap and break through?
Yeah, we're really working on that. We've had more mainstream media interest recently, you know, with some drama around some of our rounds and controversial decisions. And do you know what? That's okay. It's talkability, because we need eyeballs on our sport, and that's what sport is. And it is a challenge. When we were in COVID, I launched at Sirens a campaign called Headlines Not Sidelines. And it was because there was no other sport happening except really netball, and we still weren't getting the cut through. So there was a couple of things that we wanted to do. One was understand why, and two was go to the kind of journalists and broadcasters and go, how do we work with you? What do you need? And what is it you want from us that is going to be of interest? So we've really developed that. And what actually came out of it is, even if you can try everything, there are going to be journalists. There are a lot of male journalists, and Paul, you will know this, that they're just not interested. They just want to cover netball. So it's a thing that our media team are constantly working against and working with, to understand. What we do have is bringing the BBC in. BBC are far more than just the sport platform. And we've always said that actually, how I think we're going to resonate and attract new audiences, we've got to go to where they are. Because if your social feed does not have netball in its algorithm, why are you going to see it? Why are you going to search us out? However, there are a number of platforms where we can take our athletes and we can tell our stories and we can engage. When people see our sport, they love it and they're engaged, but we've just got to take it to them. So we're working with our broadcast partners. We're working with journalists, having lunches, having, you know, conversations and building personal relationships with them. Things like grand finals at the O2, big headlines that we are really working on, creating that talkability around the competition. Who are the stars in there? You know, what else are we representing other than the competition? All of these things, it's going to take time, but there's quite a significant strategy that we're working on to get that cut through. What I have appreciated this year is Nottingham Forest coming in, have put netball and their netball team on their main channels. Now, that has never been done before. We all know the toxic language that can be used against female footballers and female sports athletes. To not only take a female sport to put netball there and to represent us credibly, we've seen such a culture shift and such that allyship and that advocacy with so many followers, with such a high profile, has been really powerful for us and has helped us to generate more interest. So with everything at the moment, it's a work in progress, but the more that we can show real interest and growth in fandom around our sport, the more we become more compelling as a story.
You mentioned Forest there, Claire. One of the big standouts there has been Roland Stripker, the goal shooter for South Africa.
Have you heard what they play when she scores a super shot?
Yes, I've been there, of course, Jolene. It's brilliant.
So good.
And one of the pieces around Roland's success has been her super shot ability, the way she is to shoot that. And Paul and I love to talk about it, but you sort of mentioned the website earlier. The frustrations that we have as media trying to talk about it is that missing stat information. And it was, I went to the Super Cup and there was no stats available on Super Cup day. It was sort of just like, oh, okay.
I know.
And going into a 2.0 when you're bringing in a new feature, and we want to talk about what that feature's doing on a sporting front, not being able to do that's quite difficult. So could you tell us, what the plan is with the website? When will that be sort of accurate and up to date?
I think we've just added new stats in there, have we not? We've just added, so that's been part of that journey. Look, Super Cup, let me just address that, because I loved it, and it was such an amazing event, but it was so brand new for us all, and it was one of those things on the day when we were like, oh yeah, no one knows who's about to play anybody next. So to have 8 hours of netball, the entertainment was brilliant. I mean, I just loved watching the super shot in action. I loved the quick games. I loved the jeopardy and excitement of it all. It was definitely something that our clubs pushed us to do. They wanted that format. The players loved it. But oh my goodness, so many learnings and improvements that we can take forward to next year. But those, we've made, as I said, we've already updated the website. It's coming a lot because Super Shot's new for us as well, and comparative data isn't there. So, but we were looking, I think I had it in front of me, what would the table look like if we didn't have it? So I definitely think Super Shot's done a good job for maths this year. It's definitely helped them out. When we look at, we've got, I think we're at about 35-40% of games, I'll give you the stats in a second, that are that have a goal difference of 5 or less, and that goal average, we can see that we've really driven that competitiveness. But yeah, it's Chloe, it's a work in progress. The stats are coming. We will keep growing and adding to them. What we're also doing is analysing them. So I like to understand what that means. I like to understand the decisions that have been made. I like to know then, so what does that mean for next season? What's working? Everything from, squad sizes to new rules and innovations to all these things. We had data that enabled us to make the decisions, and now it's like, how do we as a collective use this data and insight to keep driving forward and evolving the game?
I suppose it's probably, you mentioned the Super Cup. We've spoken about kind of how this season is very much a journey, but if we go back a little bit to the start of the season and way back beyond that, the whole tender process, Claire, we've spoken to sort of most teams at different stages through the course of the season, and they've spoken about kind of how, I suppose, how stressful in many ways that was, to kind of be balancing that alongside a kind of a competitive kind of drive to get into the top four. Is that something that you feel like, if you've done it again, maybe you'd give yourselves more time, maybe not put the teams under as much pressure? Clearly, there's a 10-year plan and a bigger journey here, but it does feel like maybe that last summer things kind of became a bit tricky for the teams to balance and the franchise directors.
It's not just the teams, like it's us as NSL Co. I would have loved more time. I would love more time with everything. I'd love more time. I'd love more resource. I'd love more money. We are all working flat out, and the clubs and NSL Co, we all have the same challenges here. But that was our moment with where our sport was, where women's sport was, where our broadcast deal was sitting, our sponsorship deals were sitting. It was go now or go backwards. So we will all look back and go, how the heck did we do this? Like, how the heck? And that's why we took time. We had a Super League board meeting. Was that this week? I don't even know where I've been this week. We've had a Super League board meeting this week, and it's got club representatives on there, new clubs, existing clubs, England Netball, and we're all sitting. And actually, when you look at what we've achieved and what we've done as a collective, it's absolutely remarkable. But it has come at a cost. It has been excruciatingly hard work. And that's the thing, when I just, I want to say, like, we recognise the bits that aren't there yet. We're not going to BS over it. We want you to know that we get it, we recognise it. Certain things take priority over others. We are doing our best with what we have, but we're making significant progress, and we're doing all of this, I'm going to keep going back to, without the infrastructure, resource and monies that our counterparts in traditionally male-backed sports have. So I don't think there's a lot we could have done differently, but what we have to do is what we are doing now, is now working smarter and collaboratively. So when I was reflecting and I said this, I mean, last summer was brutal. Like, rules, signing, new clubs, money, innovation, logos, brands, venues, rules, regulations, processes, boards. We're all doing this from scratch. At this moment in time, every single week, we make progress and we move forward. And what you've got are 8 committed clubs. We've got loads of data, and we've got a summer where we can actually sit, and we've got the infrastructure of our working groups and how we feed into that and how we work, that we can look at. So what does next season look like? We've already started thinking about that. Insight just around putting arena games on bank holidays doesn't work for clubs that are normally traditionally successful at filling arenas. How do we schedule them? You know, we didn't know we were going to have all of our games broadcast across Sky and BBC. So that scheduling piece, when are fans buying? How are they buying? What is it that people want from experiences? We've trialled new venues this year, taking games to Brighton, looking at those mid-sized venues. You know, we've got Liverpool returning this season. So all of these things allow us to go, okay, we've delivered season one, we've got some growth, we've got some successes. What do we now need to do moving forward? And how do we give ourselves the time to really develop those missing bits that will help us to create a more fuller product as we move into season 2?
I think we'll definitely come back to what you've learned or what you are learning. I think that's a really
Everything,
interesting part.
Chloe.
Yeah,
Everything.
but I'm
Every day, every minute.
fascinated when you're talking about how the tender process was, you know, the being in the thick of it. When the decision to add the super shot sort of came into that, because that came for clubs after recruitment, we understand, and that has now, I think, some of the consequences of that have played out in certain teams, perhaps being disadvantaged by the decisions they made in their recruitment. And you know, you'll probably tell me, like, fans love it. We see the reaction in stadiums, and of course, you know,
I
we love
hear
the
you don't love it, Chloe. That's
you
what
know,
I've been told. And I'm interested to hear what, because we knew that not everyone would like it. So, I mean, I can talk around. I know you're asking me a question and I'll explain like decision making and stuff like that. But I'm genuinely interested. Why do you not like it?
I don't like it because, well, I don't know if it's that I not necessarily have a problem with it. I think, to me, the pinnacle of netball is international games, and some of the
Okay.
best international games have never needed a super shot.
Yeah.
And I admire the skill, but I actually think what ANZ done might be a little bit more interesting, you know, really testing that skill out. But I think the thing for me that I said on this pod, actually, when we first introduced the super shot, was that I felt there were other things that we could have innovated in the game to
Okay.
make the game more robust first before tinkering with rules. Like, I
I
appreciate,
think it was a
like,
tinker. It was a bit more strategic, but okay. So I picked my pen up because I'm about to write down what are your ideas that you think would be helpful to look at or improve or develop?
stats was a big part of it for me
All right,
because of
yeah.
the Caitlin Clark piece. You know, for me, that's one of the big lessons out of the WNBA, is actually the reason the excitement is there is because we've been told, and there has been signposts of a generational talent which comes from data, and we haven't
Yeah,
really, you know, it's hard as a media to story tell when we don't have
yeah.
the information to be able
I
to do
hear
that
you.
properly. The other thing for me was, and I think we've seen this playing out a little bit, is like helping our officials officiate the game better. So we ask
Okay.
our players to be professional, we ask them to step up, to be stronger, to fight for more ball, and we've seen, unfortunately, I think the negatives of that with Gabby Marshall, you know, not being, and then also the super shot controversy that you talked about that led to people being interested because, you know, these umpires aren't professional as well. So can we look at video tech? How can we, and that to me also is, you know, it's on a slightly different path to something like SSN, I think, and that could be something that differentiates us. But look, if the super shot is here to stay, I understand that. But to go back to my sort of original question, yeah, tell us a little bit about why you decided to do it, to launch it when you did, and you know, what you think the
Yeah, I
consequences are.
will do, and let's go back to officiating in a bit as well, because that is really important and it's something that everyone wants to talk about. But I've got some really great data on that as well. It might be worth, he might kill me for saying this, but bring Gary on to talk about actually the strategy and the development, because we have got the best umpiring pool in the world, believe it or not, and the progress that has been made this season is fantastic. But in terms of what next, that's absolutely where my head is all the time. The what next and how can we do things better. But super shot, the first thing that was said to me when I was announced in post by a couple of fans who have another podcast, was you better not bring the super shot in, Claire. And we knew it was going to be controversial. We always said that we would, it's within our gift to add innovations, to look at the rules, and all of this was linked to our strategy of compelling competitive games, entertainment, new audiences, and how we kind of close the gap between top and bottom and really drive excitement around the game. Now, we were never going to make any rule changes without the clubs of the future being part of that narrative. So that's why we didn't, you know, I think I said at the start of this, we were still in contracting phase with our new clubs in May, and our signing window happened at the end of grand final last year. So clubs accepted their place in the Super League at the end of May. They're then kind of working. Some of them then need to appoint head coaches and go through all of that process. And I'd always said we didn't feel it was right for clubs or individuals that weren't potentially going to be part of that future and investing in what professionalisation looked like to influence the decisions that would then impact our clubs. So we pulled together a performance working group, which has got everybody on it, and it had players. We had players, NPA. We took stats from the Roses that were over in SSN. We have England Roses performance head coaches. We also brought our partners in, our commercial partners, and we worked through everything that we thought was going to be important in this first season. Interestingly, and you said you're seeing things play out at the moment with recruitment, the majority of coaches said on those calls, and have since said if you quiz them, that they wouldn't have recruited differently had they known. Because you would go, so who then? So who would you change and make that different? Whether you like it or not, we don't believe it would have changed the recruitment. So, you know, a lot of this was also backed by Sky, who said, look, if you bring this innovation in as well, we can help to support and promote the game and drive it forward. Let's go back to unlocking those commercials. So performance, commercial, franchise directors, clubs, there's a lot. I mean, the infrastructure of trying to get that up and running and what that looks like, but there is a lot of data, a lot of decision making that sat behind it. We also have to try things. We have to try things and see if they work. And for us, what we have found is it has worked. It has worked in terms of the majority of fan feedback that we've received. We've brought a sponsor in who's backed it. It's enabled us to do really exciting engagements in and around it. Actually, the sponsorship that we've got around the Super Shot is also going to grow into enabling us to have visibility in other ways. We've got store takeovers happening in Superdrug, and our athletes are going to be in the windows of stores. That's what lionesses get. Like, this is the stuff we can dream of. So there was always a performance aspect. We never were going to do anything for the sake of it, which is why we thought about tactical timeouts and not having draws. But ultimately, we are trying to create something that unlocks the sport for fans and for sponsors and enables us to power ourselves on this journey going forward. And you know what? Most people like it, but with everything, we're not going to please everybody. And I think at the moment we are happy with the feedback that we've got and the results we're seeing from its introduction.
How do you feel about soft and gentle Super Shot as a notion?
I know. Well, I'm Soft and Gentle have been amazing partners for us. You know, we can't do anything without partners. We just can't. So. And you'll see this week that we've just announced a new one. Evelyn Partners have come on board, and for us, you know, Soft and Gentle, Superdrug, Collection Cosmetics, Apple Music, these are brands that we want to work with. These are brands that are taking our sport to our target audience and our demographic. They're enabling us to co-create something really exciting and innovative. They're creating talkability, and they're enabling us to kind of develop and reinvest back into the product. And we want to be great partners, and we want to activate, because it's really hard out there at the moment. I always say it's never been easier to talk about sponsorship in women's sport, but actually it is such a busy cluttered marketplace. And so for us, bringing great brands on and showing that we're great to work with and showing how innovative we are. Like to have that soft and gentle super shot installation set up in Sky Studios and having, you know, their Sky talent have a go at it, or we've taken it into major cities and we're going to have it at the O2 for the grand final. That helps us build a really, really compelling kind of sales deck that enable us to go and say, this is why netball's exciting. And what we found as well, people have been really, really, I don't know what the word is. Other sports are like, we wish we could do things like that. They were like, we can't believe that you guys can, you know, they're so restricted by the traditional format of their game that they can't try new things. And that's the thing at the moment, when I say that netball is really exciting in the industry, not just because of our audience, not just because of our amazing athletes and how successful we are as a domestic grassroots sport with growing participation, an amazing national team, and then this really ambitious elite domestic game in the middle, but because we're brave and innovative and we try new things. And that is something I'm really proud of us for doing and for putting ourselves out there to try.
I think the innovation part is a really good one to address. But I also think, as you mentioned there, Claire, kind of the partnerships are a big part of what take things forward. But how do you turn partnerships and activations, and obviously the big question here is funding, but how do you turn them into tangible investment into a league, whether that comes from kind of partners on a private level or maybe more commercial aspect, because obviously the league hasn't had a sponsor for a couple of years. So how does those partnerships then become more for the game, for want of a better description?
Yeah, well, we talk about building a portfolio of partnerships. And again, going back to those commercial models. So, you know, bringing in game-changing investment is always an ambition. But as anybody knows, you've got to be ready to take on investment, because investors want a return, or they want a stake. So we have to be ready to have the right levels and the right people who can help to transform the game. And we've been very open that England Netball, prior to starting on this journey, they turned down private equity because they didn't feel that it was going to be right for the sport. It would have, you know, really enabled someone else to go and take it and build it the way they want, and would have taken away from our clubs and our people and what we think is the right direction of travel. But we need to bring money in. And going back to that, kind of the two critical bits for us is around broadcast and sponsorship. We have, again, you know, rightly or wrongly, we're holding our nerve on getting the right title partner, and that's it feels an odd thing to say that you might say no or not pursue certain avenues of when there's money there and you need it, but we want the right brands, and we want the right brands that can come on this journey with us. Again, what we're finding, what's exciting about netball right now, so when we sit and sell, and we know that most brands, when they speak to us, they're also speaking to football and they're speaking to rugby, and there's a lot going on. So why netball is what we're always asked. And that being at the start of a journey, and a brand being able to help co-create and take us and empower us and fuel that journey is very attractive. The ability to be kind of a big fish in a small pond, and what we know is our fans really engage with our partners and they're loyal, and you get that resonance. The ability to make a difference. So if you look at, for example, Evelyn Partners, when they've come in this week, like we're saying, you know, we've got athletes on a journey to professionalisation. We know that there's a gender gap when it comes to kind of pay, pensions, wealth advice. How can you help us to educate and empower our players? How can we educate and empower our audiences so that we're using our platform to fix the system and to close gaps? So all of these things for us are really important when we're engaging with our partners. And then for me, it's also about creating that sportainment proposition. Actually, how can we deliver cool, new, different things through what you bring to the table as well? So the more we need partners and sponsors. It's what I spend the majority of my life doing and trying to bring on board. They are driven by numbers as well. So that fan growth, that visibility, that reach, that engagement, participation numbers, that's what they're bought into. And so it's really making sure that we can prioritize those important things that enable us to unlock the greater values, but we want to be able to choose who we work with and bring the right people on board.
Is there an element, Claire? Sorry, Chloe. Is there an element, Claire, and this can be taken as a positive and a negative, I think, of rolling the dice a little bit this year? Because we've said that there's a lot this year that is new to the league. It's kind of, we've seen some new players, we've seen some new rules and all of those things. So is there almost like this is how this year plays out, and then when you go to the table for 2026, it's like, here we go. This is what we've got. These are our numbers. Is it as simple as that in some ways?
Well, sorry, I don't quite know what you're asking me. What do you mean?
Are you kind of hedging your bets a little bit on how good this season becomes before you tie yourself to maybe a title sponsor who might bring significant investment rather than something for the here and now?
And that's the thing, Paul, as well. Like before this season, we were selling a vision. So we were talking NSL 2.0 and it was conceptual. So we talked about arenas, we talked about grand final, we talked about innovations, we talked about content and partnerships and what it looked like, but you couldn't see it, you couldn't feel it. We didn't have that data. That's why for me, like Super Cup was huge for us, as is the grand final. These are our moments where we get to create and show this is what our sport looks like, to have the stats around watching, to show the pictures of the clubs in action and who they are and how they're engaging with their communities. Actually, you're absolutely right, and that's why getting these stats and showing growth and successes, of course there's a million things we need to still do and improve, but it's actually, we can sit, as I do on a lot of these panels, I am trying to make sure that netball gets that cut through as a really exciting, compelling and powerful proposition in a really busy marketplace, because we're not just competing with women's sports at the moment. You've got Ballers League coming in. We're going to have a summer where we have got women's rugby and women's football that are going to dominate. All of these, they've got big agencies behind them. They've got big resource. They've got big moments. So how does netball, with what we're working with, get our cut through? And that really was why this season was so important. And things like Super Cup, brand new competition, collaborated with the clubs, 8 hours of fans engaged, Sky being part of it, new partners, new sponsors, new rules introduced, taking our sport into bigger venues. All of these things help us to, as you say, be able to go, actually, we're here, this is who we are, and this is why you should work with us and what we perceive our value to be.
We sort of circle back to when we part to the future, bring the future back forwards again. What's the off-season going to look like for the players, Claire? Because we haven't really talked about the fact we've gone down to 10 players squads. That's been borne out in a very interesting way in terms of injury. There are only 2 clubs that haven't needed replacement players so far. We have 5 permanent replacement players.
But the squad sizes of 10 doesn't impact that. So at the moment, just on that, because I do want to just tackle some of these, because this is our opportunity as well. We introduced injury surveillance this year. For me, when we see anybody that has a significant injury, and we've had some career ending, these are the things that feel really uncomfortable. But for me, I want to understand what we're doing and how we're doing it, and what we have seen. And we knew when we went down to 10, this was so that because the data was showing us that players 10, 11 and 12, they weren't getting paid a lot. They weren't getting played. They were training to sit on the bench, and it was impacting their mental health, their experience of netball and their development as an athlete. When we have the data now with 10, we're seeing that I think players 1 to 7 are getting 75% of the court time. 10 is still sitting at about 25%, but that's why we introduced Next Gen. Those players are still in there, and I think there's a lot of learnings across us all around. I think we'll see some exciting Next Gen recruitment moving forward, but actually stacking more players on the bench we would have just had, similar to what we had last year, which is lower paid athletes. We've really, really increased our player salaries this year. So I want to make sure that anecdotal kind of what we might hear or what we might think, because I thought the same and I asked the same questions. Are we loading them? Small squad sizes creating problems? The data is suggesting not. And by the end of the season, we'll have far more insight in and around that.
I mean, I suppose to come back to you there, we've been speaking to players and they train more, but they train with fewer training partners because they're moving to these professional hours. So they're being paid to be sort of nearly professional. I think we can all agree it's not wholly professional, but they haven't got people to play against in the middle of the day. So the loading is more. They are being asked to do more on court, new rules, new regs. Is there not with the, I mean, and I don't know if what you meant by anecdotal was like the injuries but we've had a club have start the season with -4 injuries. So is it a case of starting the league later to allow time post international season for recovery, for deload, for things like that?
Or is it been looked at, and introduce it? It's going to be a big season next year because we're going into a domestic Commonwealth Games. But as I said, the integration of the domestic and the international and the alignment of those calendars is what clubs and Roses work on very closely. They need a break, and we need to look at that. But what we've seen, so that club that started with -4, one of those was pregnancy as well, and we sometimes things happen that aren't a trend across the whole. And we knew that I actually spoke to Karen Gregg before the start of the season. She's like, if something's going to go wrong, I know it's going to be our club. And it's just been a really difficult season, and these things happen. And we had it in Sirens in my final season when we had injury, pregnancy, and we just had to draw up from below. But that's why Next Gen's really important to us, and making sure that we are offering the opportunity for great competition, regular competition, and then and playing up into Super League. So as I said, actually our feedback that we've received from the MPA, and I do have a captain's call next week. I'm speaking to every captain of every club to check in with them and see how they're doing and their experiences and get feedback. But they appreciate the squads of 10, and they like the environment, and they like the competition, and it's working for them. So again, by the end of the season, we'll have far more data and insight, and we can work through that as to what next season will look like. But I think we're pretty comfortable with our squads of 10 at this moment.
How do you take that whole off-season body of work? Because we've already said about how crazy busy last summer was. If it's even possible, it feels like the end of this season might be busier, because you're going to have all this data to kind of...
I think it's going to be okay. I think, sorry to cut you off there, but only because this is probably my sanity, Paul, because I'm telling myself there is going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be like last year was just volume, get it done and figuring it out from the start. Whereas now we've got so many working groups, we've got insight across it all. And actually what I was reflecting on is that we've got time for us to sit and review and plan, whereas we're not trying to get ourselves off the ground. We're not having to kind of launch and build and create, and the foundations are there. This is about evolving, and it's about strategically planning, and it's about adding and enhancing and taking all this feedback and going, okay, and giving ourselves the breathing space. We're not building a website, we're enhancing, we're building on it. We're not getting something off the ground, we're leaning into what's worked. We are filling the gaps of what hasn't, and we're doing it all in a way that is driving forward those improvements and growing the fan base. And it's all unlock the commercials to reinvest back in, unlock the commercials to reinvest, like that's it. And it's all about fans. And I think that's the thing, is understanding the fans' role in that. Again, reflections, I was talking about how intense some of our fans can be. And I think it's because when you look at some of the new women's sports, you're a new fan to it. So what we find is, like, women's football fans, not the majority of women didn't play it at school because you couldn't. Whereas with netball, we've got really sophisticated fans who know and are invested in the sport. They know it, they followed it, they're on that journey. So, and they've been part of this journey. The Super League was 17 years, even though we've just relaunched with all of that. So I think their expectations of us and holding us accountable for what they want or what we said we were going to do. I totally get that. But also it's being very aware of where we are in our journey, and actually what can help us right now is to really be our own cheerleaders, to really celebrate the successes, to help feed in and help us to drive forward, because that fan growth, that excitement around the sport, that's the thing that helps with every challenge that we've talked about. That's where the difference lies, and it's for us to go and tackle and address all of those things that can help really engage and inspire and take our fans, new and existing, on this journey with us.
It's a message to them to sort of hold on and keep believing.
Course, but why would you not believe? Like, again, like I know there's frustrations, like I get it, like I'm no one's saying that, but look how great some of our games have been. Like, people do love the super shot, and I have to say, like, getting rid of, I know it's controversial, but how good were those last kind of 10-12 minutes of the extra time and extended extra time for netball fans? I sat in Forest, like in Motorpoint, and I watched them beat Lightning on home soil, and there was kids in the crowd that had never watched netball before, but they were there in their Forest tops, and they came because they support, and they were like, this is totally amazing. Went to Brighton for the first time and stood and heard chants of crowds go defense, and I was like, oh my god, they're creating their own fandom, because that isn't something that we traditionally done in our sport. Sitting in the utilita, and I walked in for Panthers' first ever game, and to just feel the electricity of probably one of the noisiest fans that I've ever heard, and you just, like, we're doing some really bloody good stuff here. We got to, I wish our streaming was smooth every single week. Like, I wish I'll come on here and talk more often, because there's context behind everything. We're flat out, and we're human beings behind this. But by God, netball is one of the most exciting sports. The Super League right now is one of the most exciting sports in the industry. And I hope that we can go and Roses can win a gold in Glasgow, and that our Feathers, Warriors and Thistles do a great job at the Commonwealth Games, because it's those moments that reignite this excitement. Let rugby and football have the summer. We're going to just breathe, plan, get all our ducks in a row, really build on these great foundations, and come back and make 2026 the year of netball, because we are still the most played sport by women. We are still the third biggest team sport overall, behind men's and women's football, men's and women's cricket. And we're doing all of this on our own and backing ourselves on this journey. And for everyone else that I speak to in the industry that says it's hard, I'm like, oh, I'll tell you what's hard. And we're being brave, and we're being bold, and we're trying new things, and we're learning every single day as we go. So stick with us and help us, and all the feedback and all the support and all the cheerleading is what is going to unlock this beautiful, brilliant, vibrant sport, because no one else has what we have, and we've got to do more of the good stuff.
I think that's really fair, Claire. I think of all the people we speak to, we've spoken to lots of different people at lots of different stages of the game. And I kind of go and cover it at grassroots level and all those things as well. Cover it, watch my daughter. I'm not writing reports yet on that front. But I think genuinely it comes from a place of care. I think everybody sees what you've just said and thinks, where can we go? And look, we really do appreciate your time, because you've given us sort of almost an hour here. You did just mention one thing there that I think is worth touching on, and that was obviously the Super Shot controversy that played out just a week or so ago. And this is only in relation to what the Rhinos said themselves, who said that, having sat with the competition committee, they were led to believe that there was going to be kind of a next step and a next stage. And are we likely to see that in this season, or is it going to be something that happens next season?
It's next season. When these things happen for us, everything's new. So obviously we go through a process, and our regulations don't allow us to overturn a decision. But where I sit, I go, what does this tell us? What do we need to learn, and what can we do? And it did open up for me, exactly as you said, Chloe. Well, if we're recording games, how can we watch bits back? Can we use this to kind of add to the game a little bit? And again, these are just my ideas, everybody, but I ask the questions about, can you have one captain's call or a challenge per game that we can look at? You've got a third umpire sitting there. I will go back to bring Gary on. We have got the best umpiring pool in world netball at this moment in time, and again, they're on a journey, and these guys do this. They give up their evenings and weekends to make our game happen, and I absolutely commit to working to create a real professionalisation strategy for our umpires, because when we say we need to invest in our people, we need to invest in all of our officials as well. But they make a lot of decisions. Errors can and will be made across the sport, but what we want to look at is how can we manage and mitigate them, how can we better support them, how can we add more excitement or entertainment or analysis or scrutiny into the game, and how do we do that in a fair way that protects the integrity of the sport and the competition along that. So I see this as an opportunity. Things happen in sport, everyone's got an opinion, but what can this be as an opportunity for us moving forward? We are committed wholly to looking at every aspect of the game and how we take it forward. But I just, I thank our umpires for doing what they do, because it's a lot of work, and then it's umpires and officials and referees are always the first people that everyone wants to have a pop at, and I couldn't do it, and I appreciate the time that they give us. But yeah, I would like to look at this. Stats, all these things we've talked about, Chloe, they are absolutely on our list. If we can bring things in this season, great, but it's unlikely. I think we've got to get through the next few rounds, deliver our grand final, and then go, okay, what do we want to do next?
Excellent.
I think that's probably it, Claire. Look, we could probably ask you 1,001 questions, and you've got 1,002 that you would want to ask back. But if I've rounded off all of our interviews so far this season by saying, not where do we see ourselves in 10 years, right? Where do we maybe see netball in sort of a couple of years' time, where real change might have been able to be affected, where we'll have learned very quickly, and I think everybody is on that front. So in your position as the managing director, where would you like to see netball in a couple of years' time, and maybe 2 or 3 things that you'd like to have seen brought in, gone away, whatever it might be?
I mean, for me, I think about structure, and that for me is like investment, resource, and infrastructure, because a lot of these things we would be tackling, or we would have implemented by now if we had more resource at clubs and the centre. So I would love us to have a great broadcast deal, really, really fantastic visibility, a great headline and portfolio of partners. I'd love us to be developing some of our own venues and arenas, which I know we're having conversations. I mean, we haven't even touched on the fact that we brought in investment from Knighthead Capital this year, like multi-million investment from Knighthead Capital in Birmingham. This is like really exciting for our sport, and again puts us on the map. But strong clubs, strong centre, delivering strong competition. I'd love to see our players to be more household names, and I've been really working on that, because I just think they're amazing. I think they're amazing on and off the court, and we want to be able to tell those stories and to leverage that. But I think, it's all the potential, everything that I see that we can be, I would like us to realise. And I don't think we're too far off. Like from season 1, you will see big leaps and improvement from next season, even down to just how we're working across the whole sport. We've always said we want to create an integrated ecosystem, and these things, from how we work with our clubs and across the netball family, they're all being put into place, and they'll start to return. And the more time that we have to kind of work on these things and to sell and to showcase, as I said, a big year for netball with Commonwealth Games next year. I see us really leaning into and leveraging our full potential. This year has been like, let's get going. It's been tough, but by God, our clubs are remarkable. Like, they're just what everyone gets up and does every single day. And I just so wanted a documentary, because I'm like, people need to see what is really going on here, because you see, we sit and watch them, and we watch the struggle, but everyone's got a bit of budget, everyone's got a something, and we're doing this really, but bare bones, a lot of grit and self-belief. But I love how collaborative we all are. I love how we challenge each other, and everyone's committed to making this sport a success. And as tough as it is, if you've got those foundations, I believe you can do it.
Listen, Claire, thank you once again for your time. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you saying you'll come back again, because I'm sure once we put this out, there'll be plenty of questions from us as journalists and plenty that other people would say. But look, an hour of anyone's time is precious, and we're grateful. Thank you.
Happy to do it. I do believe in speaking little and often is much better, and we can just work through things and tackle them as they go. And it's absolutely the road to the grand final is going to get really exciting. I haven't even told you about our plans for the O2, so let's do it. Hopefully we've tackled some of the big things that we know fans want to hear, but we'll come back on and let's stay connected, because it's been great to chat.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. We look forward to that. Go on, Chloe.
Yeah. No, I just want to say thank you to Claire for her time as well. Yeah, and I look forward to catching back up as well.
Thanks for having me, guys.